I'm going to see if I can get Member Fasoon up on the screen here. There we go. Can you hear us, Mira?
Yeah.
Okay, and we can hear you. Okay, I don't see Member Bierce just yet, but we could go ahead and do roll call now.
Can we just add her if she joins later?
Yeah, if she's running a little late, that's okay. Okay. Okay, so Member Bierce is absent at the moment. Member Fasoon?
Here.
Member Hodges?
Here.
Member Lieberman?
Here.
Member Melgen? Here. And Chair Vahil McClanahan. Excellent. And then in order to comply with state law, Member Fasoon needs to disclose why she's virtual today. Oh, sorry, we can't hear you. Try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I tested positive for COVID last week, and I'm still testing positive. I'm still pretty sick, so that's why I'm on a virtual basis today.
Thank you. And do you have any adults in the room with you? Great. And if any do enter during the course of the meeting, please just disclose that. Oh, and Member Bierce is here. So same.
I think remotely because of a medical reason, so I will be participating here via Zoom tonight. And thank you for having this flexibility, really appreciate it. And I'll be announcing when another adult is in the room, so thank you all.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I think with that, we can move on to the land acknowledgement.
The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lishan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. We're going to go to item 2, which is approval of the July 17th minutes.
Any questions or comments on the minutes?
Do we have any public comment on the minutes from July?
I don't see any hands raised.
All right. I move that we approve the minutes from July.
Seconded.
Okay, Member Bierce?
Yes.
Member Fasoon?
Yes.
Member Hodges?
Yes.
Member Lieberman?
Yes.
Member Melgen?
Yes.
Chair Vahil McClanahan.
Yes. All right, next up we have general public comment. For those who have an announcement, we can do that in the announcement section. So this is for any comment for an item not on the agenda today.
I'm seeing one hand raised online. Should I bring the pen? Go ahead, Lucinda.
Hello, good evening. This is Lucinda Young, member of the Albany Climate Action Coalition. I have just a suggestion for consideration, and that is I did see in Michelle's memo an outline of the DD funds received and what they've been allocated for, and there is still quite a bit of funds yet to be allocated. And there was some discussion, I believe last year, may have been the year before, about a rebate for heat pump hot water in addition to the current rebate for heat pump HVACs. And at that time, my recollection is that the thinking was that with the $2,000 tax credit, that that was sufficient to do a pretty good job of equalizing the cost differential between a gas hot water and heat pump hot water. And currently, besides the $2,000 tax credit, there really are no significant other rebates or tax credits available. And I am finding, both from my own experience getting bids and as well as various other friends in Albany who are getting bids, that there is a huge disparity, even with the $2,000 tax credit, between the cost of a gas hot water heater and a heat pump hot water heater. And so I would like to throw out there for consideration adding a rebate for heat pump hot water in addition to the HVAC rebate. And that's, oh, and also on the sustainability ordinance, which passed, the sustainable food ordinance that passed on Monday, it passed on the consent calendar. Congratulations on getting that through. That's really great. I would like to see, there was some discussion about working out the details for large events, because large events are excluded from the ordinance. And I would just like to see that move forward, that not just fall to the wayside. Large events generate a huge amount of waste, and that really should be dealt with. And I also would like to see some outreach about this ordinance. I don't know if there are plans to notify all the cities. Cities have a year to transition, but I think the outreach needs to start soon. There is a bulletin board outside the public library with city council matters. I thought that would be one place to post, and as well as in the city publication that comes out quarterly. Thank you.
Got another hand raised now. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is for good of the city, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so thank you, Climate Action Committee members, for volunteering your time for this important committee and advising the City Council on how to address climate change. I think given with the climate action and the climate emergency declaration, we need to move things along pretty quickly. In the upcoming presentation staff will give on I think it's, well, I can't remember exactly what it specifically is, but there's information in the staff report that shows that the Measure DD funds collected have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 750,000 just for climate action per the request of the voters with the City Council, and the City Council has been honoring that, so that's great. However, only 260,000 have been allocated. 160 of that have gone to the heat pump program, which is great, but there's a lot we need to do, and to have almost $500,000 sitting there undesignated for what we're doing seems like we're not meeting the urgency of the climate emergency declaration. So I strongly recommend that the Climate Action Committee start to put together some very far-reaching actions, and also goad the city a bit more to take their own leadership actions, especially in electrification of city buildings and electrification of city fleet. I think there's a huge opportunity there, which has been passed up again and again, to show that the city is serious about leading in this example. You know, the community center is a great place where a lot of our members come and do things. They go there now and take a cooking class. They're cooking on gas units, which seems completely unnecessary, given that gas cooking not only pollutes interior air, but contributes to, you know, using methane gas contributes to the whole climate crisis in general. So I think there are things the city can do, and probably during the future agenda items, I'll come back and present for that. But I really urge you to work quickly, more quickly, to bring forward things to the city council to make the city a leader in this effort to address climate change. Thank you very much.
No more hands raised.
Thank you. Public commenters. It is now time for item 4, the announcements. We'll start with staff announcements and then proceed to public announcements.
Great. I have 2 announcements, one of which got sort of previewed for the committee, which is that the Sustainable Foodware Ordinance was passed by the City Council on Monday. Very exciting news. This ordinance, as we mentioned during the presentation, won't go into effect for another year past the ordinance effective date. So it's actually a year and a month from today. And during that time, we'll be working on extensive outreach and technical assistance to help restaurants meet the requirements of that ordinance. Another exciting announcement is that we have just passed the 100,000 mark for rebate checks given out to people in the city. Yes, we've given away over $100,000 now for heat pumps, which has contributed to just over 70 different heat pump systems throughout the city, which is fantastic news. And I'm going to pass it over now to our colleague, Margot, who I think is online now, who has an announcement about Albany Hill.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. I'm Margot Cunningham, Natural Areas Coordinator, and I work out of Public Works. And wanted to let folks know that for the past year, we've been working on a comprehensive plan for managing eucalyptus on city property on Albany Hill and restoring native plant habitat. And we have a team of consultants who've been helping us come up with this plan. We've got landscape architects, ecologists, and biologists. And the plan balances fire safety with native plant habitats, and then also monarchs who cluster on the hill each season they actually start coming here in about a month. So the plan, it will take into account the monarchs that are there, and they cluster on the eucalyptus, so we need to take that into account. We've solicited feedback from residents and from the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission and City Council. And we now have a 65% draft plan for people to look at and give us feedback. And it's available on the city's Albany Hill website. If you go to that and you scroll down to the Albany Hill Eucalyptus Project, you'll see a copy of the draft plan documents, and then also the presentation that we made just last week to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission. So we encourage everyone to take a look at the documents and provide us feedback. You'll see that we've got a project email list that you can send us comments to. Thank you.
Thanks, Margot. Any announcements from committee members?
Clarification question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just that I assume we should email comments to Margot and team and not comment on them now is preferable?
If you have a short clarification question, now is okay, but yeah, more detailed questions or comments would be better for email.
Great, thank you.
I was going to announce about the Bon Marché, but we have the organizers here tonight, so please welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So yeah, we're excited to introduce Bon Marché, which is going to be a secondhand market that's going to take place on Solano Avenue on Saturday, October 5th. and made possible, it's important, by a generous grant that we got from the Albany Community Foundation. And so why are we doing this? So first of all, the inspiration comes from our experience with secondhand markets in France for me and in Denmark for Sarah, where it's very common to buy and sell secondhand items, but in a specific location, people gather at the same place. So it's very much community events. Another reason why we're doing it is because as we were talking with members of the Albany Climate Action Coalition, and as we also watched your presentation, Michelle, in February about emissions in the city of Albany, and we noticed that, first of all, emissions related to goods consumption are extremely high as food consumption, which was, I didn't know about that. And then the second reason is that we also found that in the climate action, in the Albany Climate Action Plan, there's a goal to promote the reuse and repair economy. So we thought that we love that kind of events because it really promotes a sustainable way of life, but also it fits perfectly with the city's climate action plan. So in addition to the market, we're also hosting a Halloween costume swap. It's going to be the third time for us. It's growing every year, and it's another fun way to talk about sustainability. Halloween generates a staggering amount of waste every year: costumes, decorations, and plastic candy wrappers. And so again, we want to find a fun way for people to be aware of all this and reduce their impact.
And sort of an American flair that we're adding is we're making this both a fun market, but also an informational one. And so we're also partnering with Nimble, which is a Berkeley-based repair company that's actually received national acclaim, and they're coming to be there. They will take orders ahead of time, and they will accept them at the market, but they're also really there to share their mission and to get people interested in not just throwing things away when they break, that they can be repaired. We're also going to have the City of Albany. The Albany Climate Coalition will have information booths. And then we're really excited because we're partnering with Dorothy's Closet, which is an organization that supports the unhoused. And they are going to come. So we expect that things will sell, and we hope things will sell, but we have our own experience selling in these markets, and not everything sells. And sometimes you don't actually want to bring it home. And so the idea is that if the vendors have things that, and when I say vendors, I mean our community members, because our vendors they're not professional, they're community members, but they can have the opportunity to donate that to Dorothy's Closet. And we're also talking to Berkeley Humane as well. So we're hoping that just this loop will be closed in that way, that we are not going to be throwing anything into landfill. And so we just want to say that our goal for this first market is to test our concept. We're doing it in a private space, and we're doing it in a manageable way with a small amount of vendors. But we really see growth potential here, and when that growth happens, we really would like to partner with the city. One area right away we're thinking about is with our food vendors. I mean, with this ordinance passing, we would love our food vendors to use sustainable foodware only, and we're thinking, how can we make that accessible to them and test them with them at this market? So that's something immediately, but long term, if we need bigger spaces, community spaces, public spaces, this would be a partnership we would hope to have with the city. And I just want to give context. I spent a lot of time in Copenhagen, and it's smaller than the East Bay, and on any given weekend, there are probably 50 of these markets happening. So it is possible to grow this and to grow it big. And so we want to be part of that, and we really want Albany to be a leader in doing that. So thank you for giving us the time.
And hoping to see you on the 5th.
Yes, that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I assume there will be something in the Albany e-news with details about where the space is, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it is posted in the Albany e-news.
It's already in there.
Well, it will be this coming Friday. And I think there's a website that you can check out as well.
love any and all promotion. Share with your friends. We're learning as we go. We're sharing on social. We have a website. We're sharing on different Facebook channels. We're going to, thanks to the grant, do some paid advertising. But we want to have a good attendance. We want this to go well so we can do it again. So share widely. Thank you.
All right. That's all for the announcements. Thank you.
And we can open it up for other public comment as well. I don't see any hands, but we can give a second if anyone.
Sure, let's do
if
that.
there's any
If
public
anyone is
comment.
listening, but
that we
this
do
would be a comment on the announcements, please.
We have one hand raised. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yes, I just want to have a big shout out for Bon Marché. I think it's a really great idea, and I would love to see, I'm part of the Albany Climate Action Coalition, and we're actually going to be hosting a table there and an information table. We're going to talk about the foodware ordinance, and one thing we're going to be doing is offering free coffee and free lemonade if you bring your own reusable cup, so we can talk to people about the reusable foodware ordinance. But I would love to see, you know, if this is a pilot, but assuming we get a lot of visitors to this event, I would love to see this be a citywide or city-supported event. Thank you.
No other hands raised.
Great, great. Let's go along. We don't have any presentations tonight, which is weird. So maybe we'll get to do a lot of discussion. The first discussion item is the proclamation of appreciation for Sutton Payne.
Okay. Well, as you can see, Sutton's not here tonight. He is online, though. We kind of let him go early, but tomorrow is his last day with the city, and so I want to appreciate him. And we're getting it put up on the screen right now.
Could you zoom out a little? Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Okay. In honor of Sutton Payne's term of service to the city of Albany, whereas Sutton Payne has dedicated his time to serve the city as a Civic Spark Fellow, and whereas Sutton came to the city of Albany with a passion for sustainability, social justice, and equity, and whereas Sutton provided valuable project management for the street tree management plan and vigilantly ensured that the plan incorporated a deep consideration of equity, and whereas Sutton conducted extensive research and community engagement for the development of a sustainable foodware ordinance, including working with 2 restaurants to run pilot programs, and whereas Sutton wrote a sustainable foodware ordinance and presented his work to the Climate Action Committee and City Council for adoption, and whereas Sutton engaged the community at the City of Albany's Community Expo, sharing resources and information about sustainability, the street tree management plan, and waste reduction, and whereas Sutton developed a quiz to quickly and easily provide residents with information about resources and programs they may be eligible for. Thank you, Justin. And whereas Sutton approached every challenge with kindness, thoughtfulness, and attention to detail. And whereas Sutton's dedication and expertise have assisted the city in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and making an impact on global climate change. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Albany wishes to express its sincere gratitude and appreciation for Sutton Payne's service term within the City of Albany to help foster a sustainable future, and wishes him the best in his future endeavors. And I'd just like to say a very warm-hearted thanks to Sutton for all of his work. He has been really, really fantastic this year and has helped us so much. And it's been really great to see him grow as a sustainability warrior and policymaker. So with that, I think Sutton is here. So if anyone, yes, he is online. So if anyone has thoughts or comments for him, and then we can open it up to public comment and then take our very formal vote.
Saying I was super impressed by Sutton's work on the foodware ordinance and the street tree plan and everything he's worked on. Only known him very briefly, but it's just the thoroughness, the thoughtfulness, attention to detail, and really awesome suggestions are really much appreciated. It's also a typo in the resolution before the word in the be it resolved section, so you can probably fix that for him. That'd be great. Other than that, yeah, great work.
I think maybe we'll do the traditional, if anyone can't really ask questions about it.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe we should roll the public comment and
Sure,
then come
yeah.
back for any more comments.
Yeah, great.
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Nick Peterson with Albany Climate Action Coalition. So it's just very encouraging to see young people like Sutton come aboard with Albany as Civic Spark Fellows and put their passion and energy towards our small cities' efforts to address climate change. It really gives me a sense of optimism when you look at just how big the crisis is and just how much needs to be done right now. So it's encouraging to see this program continue to provide Albany with just really top level work and dedication and passion around doing climate action. It's also a bit heartbreaking to see these young people come in and do this and then leave. I wish there was a way. I mean, sometimes they can stay. We had Lizzie came out of the Civic Spark program. But it would be nice if someone like Peyton something like Sutton could stay. And we need a lot of organization and dedication to this process. I think the city is not moving as quickly as it should on this and needs people really pushing the envelope, putting in the hours, and doing the hard work that it takes to get something like a reusable foodware ordinance in place and done. It's a bit much to just keep piling it on to Michelle and others that are already doing a lot of work. So I'm hopeful that the city finds some way to have a second pass with our Civic Spark Fellows if they so desire, and they've been acclimated and understand our processes here. They understand the city. They've started making contacts. They start knowing people in the staff of the city, and it would just be so much more efficient if they could stay around and continue that passionate work on climate bringing forth the goals of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. Thank you very much.
We don't have any other hands, despite the fact that we can't fix the timer.
All right. So now, any comments from the committee members?
I guess I'll just second what Member Beer said, which is just really appreciate Sutton's great work, and especially on the foodware ordinance. I imagine that was a pretty big lift, and I wish you the best.
I'd like to add to that stack of adjectives, like thoughtful. Also, I appreciated Sutton's presence as being very genuine. I think that's always good to encounter in government stuff. Dedicated and focused, which is definitely, it was a great benefit to all of us that Sutton was able to just jump in and take on some very much needed projects and complete them. That was awesome. So thank you.
We do need a motion to
Yeah.
pass the proclamation.
Looking to see, so has everyone had a turn to speak that wants to? All right. I move we adopt this proclamation.
I'll second that.
Member Beers,
Yes.
Member Fasoon?
Yes.
Member Hodges? Yes. Member Lieberman?
Yes.
Member Melgen?
Yes.
Chair Vahill McClanahan.
Yes.
Thank you again, Sutton, and enjoy your night off.
All right. Our next item, 6.2, is a discussion about options for promoting active transportation.
Okay. Just a moment. I know, I'm not sure. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. So I will be speaking tonight about, like it says, options for promoting active transportation. This is a topic that came up a couple months ago, and there was interest in considering the different ways that the committee might be able to work on this issue and try to advance our efforts there. So it's sort of a relatively broad discussion we'll be having. I'll start out just with some kind of background on the efforts that the city has been undertaking. So first of all, the Climate Action Adaptation Plan has a whole range of goals. The kind of biggest goal is our overall greenhouse gas emissions. By 2035, our goal is to reduce by 70% and then to be carbon neutral by 2045. And then a sub-goal of that is decreasing our passenger vehicle miles traveled through the use of alternative modes, including active transit, and to reduce that by 25% by 2045. So those are the sort of overarching goals. There's also a series of other smaller city efforts. So the active transportation plan is probably the most relevant one. This is a plan that was put together in 2012, and really focuses on all of the different ways that the city can create a better environment for active transportation. So that's things like bike lanes and crosswalks, and also programmatic things as well. This picture on the side here shows the bike network that's in the city currently, and that has been developed since the creation of that active transportation plan. We are currently in the process of updating the active transportation plan, and luckily we have Justin Freed here, our Transportation Sustainability Manager, who can answer questions about that. But that's a process that's ongoing now. That all kind of really focuses more on the infrastructure side of things, so we can discuss that sort of difference in a minute, but that's one of the big efforts underway. We also have a citywide sidewalk repair program that has repaired a very large amount of the sidewalk in the city, just making it better for pedestrians. We have a contract with Cycles of Change that does bicycle education in the schools, and we also have a crossing guard program for the schools. So those are some of the kind of big things that the city is doing right now. And then, there's also this discussion of what the role of the Climate Action Committee is. We talked about this a little while ago. One of the things that's tricky about active transit is that a really significant piece of the puzzle when it comes to active transit is about infrastructure. It's about, protected bike lanes and, like I said, crosswalks and sidewalks and all those types of things. And most of that work really kind of falls within the realm of the Transportation Commission. They are the ones that kind of have more of the experience with infrastructure work. They get into those details. They, talk about sidewalk design and all those types of things. And the role of the Climate Action Committee is really more on the program and policy side, right? So, for instance, there's the sort of larger policy that exists within the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. As you can see below here, there's discussion of developing a new active transportation plan. That's within the CAP, talking about having a priority to expand bicycle infrastructure in the city. So setting those sort of large-scale goals is within the realm of the CAC and has been done within the CAP to a large extent. And then there's also room for other types of programs and smaller policies that could exist to try to advance active transportation. So the rest of the slideshow, I'm going to talk about those different types of options in a bit more detail. And all of this is really meant to just be kind of a guide of the types of things that the CAC might be interested in doing, and really to give a sense of like what types of priorities, what types of things the committee feels are really important to pursue, what issues or solutions might be the most fruitful. Not to say, we need to pick one of the things on this list necessarily. But I kind of categorized it into some buckets, and the first of those is direct support programs. So this might be something like a subsidy program to, subsidize bikes or e-bikes or, cargo bike equipment or something like that, or to provide active transit-related supplies like, helmets and bike panniers and, reflective wear, all kinds of things like that you can imagine. So, monetary support effectively. There are lending programs in existence, so bike or e-bike lending programs. It's a bit more complicated, but it does exist and can be helpful to give people a chance to experience what an e-bike commute might look like for them before they make a really large purchase, for example. And then also there's events and classes. We do have some of that now, but providing funding for bike safety classes or active transit related events could be another approach. The next bucket is policy. Obviously we talked about the sort of overarching policy of the CAP, for example, but there's also smaller policies. One of the biggest places to look when it comes to this is related to parking policy. So that might be ways to manage parking using things like time limits or fees or a permit program. Basically, managing who can park where and when. And that could potentially be used to try to encourage people to bike or walk instead of driving. This is a bit of a tricky subject in some ways. The city has investigated doing some sort of a parking permit program in the past. That was a lot of alliteration, sorry. But, eventually after a large study a few years ago, the Transportation Commission, Climate Action Committee, and City Council all determined that it didn't make sense to pursue it. That said, it could be that it makes sense to do a different, smaller kind of parking permit policy or something else. Not that it can't be looked into again, but it is a somewhat tricky topic. There are other types of policies theoretically that could be looked into too, but this is sort of the big one that people think about when it comes to active transit. And then there's also public facilities. So, this is things like bike racks or bike lockers. Obviously we have a lot of the bike racks on Solano, but, could look at trying to expand bike infrastructure, bike parking infrastructure, or more secure infrastructure. Another thing that I've seen around is crosswalk flags. We have a few of them on Marin Avenue, actually, but, it's a way to increase visibility. And, it's like not really infrastructure, but a sort of minor version of that. And then there's also bike share. There is the wider regional bike share program, and we could try to make attempts to bring that into Albany. That's not something we can do by ourselves. We'd have to work in partnership to try to bring that in, but that's something we could try to pursue as well. And again, that would be a sort of public facility type approach. So those are sort of ideas about the types of things that the CAC could look into, the sort of categories meant to inspire. And then also, again, with the context of funding, we've talked in the past about Measure DD, which is, again, the public or the utility users tax, which was passed in 2020. And a third of the revenue is intended to be spent on climate action programs. The total revenue of that 1/3 climate pool so far is about $750,000. And of that, exactly 260,000 have been budgeted for various programs, including the EV charging pilot program and the heat pump rebate program. It's important to remember that we shouldn't think of this as, okay, here's the money we get to play around with and let's budget it all. It doesn't exactly work like that, but it is useful to just have a sense of the type of money that the council is sort of imagining spending on programs like this, to give you a sense of what's more or less possible to get through council and how to prioritize between different types of programs. So that's really the intent there. So all that said, I think the goal for the discussion that I have in mind tonight is really to think about what is the priority level of active transit efforts, and what are the sort of biggest issues or barriers or things that the committee thinks we should try to work on, if there's any particular direction that the committee is interested in taking or looking into more. Again, all the ideas I brought up here are sort of concepts, but it would really take a discussion of where do we think it's important to go, and then could go deeper at one or more of those points. So sort of a general discussion for tonight of what direction the committee wants to go in on this topic. So with that, I will take questions.
So if you're looking for a prioritization of ideas and or new ideas here?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
To clarify, you're looking for a prioritization of ideas and or new ideas here?
Yeah, I think either of those is up for discussion. At this point, it's whatever direction the committee wants to take it in, really, I think. But I think, the most effective way I'm imagining this going is sort of, discussion of what types of things the committee wants to move forward with, or whether the committee wants to look into any of these types of programs.
So in the past, we've talked about sort of, in reference to the Measure DD money, we had a presentation from Jeff Bond, a year ago or so, talking about how the budget cycle works with capital improvement plans. And then we've talked a little bit about what sizes of things are small enough that they can just get done ad hoc and don't need to go through the whole process. Can you remind us that size?
There are certain amounts that, for instance, Jeff can sign off on. I think he can technically sign off on like $10,000. It's not a super hard and fast rule, because it does kind of depend on like the scale of the program and whether it seems like council needs to be involved in it. But generally things under $10,000 are easier to do. And I think the city manager also has.
Well, it sounded to me like the question is more in terms of process. I think most of these things that would be new programs would be looking to a council policy or programmatic action, unless it is the scale Michelle was saying, like that under 10,000 might be something that just within the department budget we initiate before it becomes a bigger program that we then present to council for consideration. But outside of that, if it was a program looking for larger scale funding, it would need a council appropriation. The budget cycle is a 2-year cycle for how the city does budget moving forward. And we'll be going through that process this coming spring for the next 2-year budget.
What exact date does that begin?
Don't know more specifically. It's a fiscal year budget, so it would be for a July 1 fiscal year would be the start of the next.
Question for Justin while I've got you here. Yeah, what are the core elements of the plan that are being refreshed this time around?
Yeah, so the active transportation plan will be going through essentially 3 phases of the plan development, but we're looking at a full new plan. And so this first round will be rolling out over in about a month. We'll be looking at setting the vision and goals and going over existing conditions, what our existing facilities now look like now that we're 10 years into implementing the last plans, facilities, and projects. Looking at what level of comfort those facilities provide, where the gaps and opportunities are. At the end of that first round, we'll then be going into what is the desired future network of facilities, at what level of comfort or level of traffic stress, or now the framework is all ages and abilities, like how much of the facilities would be designed towards that threshold, and really building out that network vision and the policies or programs that might be associated with that. And then the third round would be looking at more specific project prioritization, to really which is the top priority to fill in that network or to upgrade facilities on the existing network. So it'll be over the next 8 to 12 months, going through sort of those 3 phases.
I should have looked this up myself before the meeting, but are there elements in the Climate Action Adaptation Plan, am I getting that acronym right, that we should be drawing from, as we're brainstorming? Are there items in there that might be a good fit?
Yeah, I mentioned a few of them or I think all of the relevant ones in the memo. And I think I have them listed here. Sorry, one second. Sorry, it's a little bit
there you
difficult
go. Oh, thank you.
See.
Sorry, I was focused on your Venn diagram.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so there's the development of a new active transportation plan, expanding and enhancing bike infrastructure throughout the city, research feasibility and emissions reductive impact of implementing a parking management strategy, and encourage use of active transportation through education and incentive programs. So it, pretty similar to the things we were discussing today, although, slightly different wordings. Yeah.
Thank you. I had a comment and a question. First, the comment. Goal is stated here to decrease passenger vehicle miles traveled by 25%. But it doesn't break out between fossil fuel vehicles and EVs, which is a little surprising. Was this adopted before EVs really became as popular as they have become?
EVs are an element of the plan, those definitely, they're mentioned in several areas. I think the intent of that goal was to not only have a focus on reducing emissions by switching over to EVs, but also reducing overall climate impact by focusing on active and public transit in addition to switching to electric vehicles.
Okay. And then the question, was there ever discussion of making some parking spaces for electric vehicles only? Nothing separate from anything about charging infrastructure, but just like some spaces now are for compacts only.
Right. Yeah, we do actually have, we have a requirement in our green building ordinance for new commercial parking lots, or I think it's just new or like retrofitted commercial parking lots, that they have to have clean air spaces. So that's electric vehicles, carpool or van pool vehicles, pretty much anything that can get the like carpool lane sticker. So it's like designated parking just for those. And I think it's like 12% of the total parking spaces. So there is a requirement for that, but it's only for new parking spaces or retrofits.
And I imagine politically it would be difficult to get a third of the spaces on San Pablo Avenue redesignated like that. That's kind of what I was thinking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know like the specifics of how that type of thing would work. I imagine there probably would be some political pushback on it, but it's also something that could be looked into. It's an idea. Yeah.
You explained about how the city had done some analysis on the permit system.
Mm-hmm.
Was the question of paid parking on Solano Ave part of that research, or is that a separate, not yet researched?
That's a great question. It was before my time, and I was trying to skim through the report quickly today, but I didn't catch all of it. I know the majority of it was focused on the idea of a residential parking permit program, like, the side streets off of Solano. That would be like, the residents get a year-long permit or something like that, similar to how they have in parts of Berkeley. I don't know whether they looked into paid parking on Solano. I believe, like based on my foggy memory of reading this quickly, I think they looked into that as an option, and it was very unpopular in the public outreach. But I would have to double check to be sure on exactly the details.
It was part of the study. The occupancy along Solano and San Pablo was part of what was looked at in terms of the utilization of street parking, both on the commercial corridor and in the first blocks off of.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, let's go to, this is interestingly arranged. I guess we should go to public comment in general on this discussion item. Then we'll discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Nick Peterson of Albany Climate Action Coalition. So it's great that this is being brought to the Climate Action Committee. Active transportation plan update is really critical. Active transportation is an important part of making a livable and more humane city. People have asked about, well, couldn't we just change all the cars to electric? That'd be great. Part of the issue is that you got 4,000-pound boxes of steel roaming around, intimidating people, and we've prioritized our urban planning to allow that, and there was a desire to sort of move away from that, which would also reduce the amount of pollution done. And the 25% reduction, I'm guessing, just assumes that's overall what we want to do, and that will have some benefit for just climate issues, but it'll also have benefit for the livability of the city, and that people walking, pedestrians, and people who are moving around in the commercial areas and the residential areas will be safer. So the other thing I wanted to mention, I was around when the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan was being updated, and it was very important to include parking management. I worked very hard to maintain that, the parking management plan option in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. The problem with this is there's no political will in the city to carry this through. It is a dicey problem. In Albany, parking is free. You park in commercial areas, as long as it's 90 minutes or less, it's free. If you park around your residence, it's free. I know people that have 5 cars and they park them all over the street, and it's free. So they can have 5 cars and they can drive 5 cars. Another neighbor of mine had 3 or 4 restored 1960s V8 gas guzzlers that he parks on the street 1 block off of Solano, hogging up parking, but parking his restored vehicles for free. It's all free. So the idea was you could use a parking management plan to start to incentivize people to get rid of some of these, especially gas-powered vehicles they don't really need anymore, rather than making it the priority that, car usage or car presence all over our city is a freebie. And that's, since we've hit on that, and since Albany really is addicted to that, it's really hard to address. I mean, if you want to bring people out in force to anything, they don't show up until you start to reduce parking. Then they come screaming because it's something they've had. It's a right they've had for such a long period of time. So it'll be really a challenge to put in something that is worthwhile. So I'm hoping that you guys really do consider that and think creatively about it, because it is a very powerful tool.
This is Lucinda Young with the Albany Climate Action Coalition, and I have a few thoughts. First of all, I would like to support Nick's comments about supporting parking management. However, I'm very aware that it is a very politically sensitive issue. I do want to share my very personal experience. I live on the 700 block of Pomona, half a block from the Albany pool. My next door neighbor has 6 vehicles, old vehicles that he stores on our block and sometimes on the adjacent block. They get moved once a month for street parking day. And when neighbors call the police and ask the police to fine him. And again, he gets free storage of these vehicles. It's a problem. If you look at other cities, they have limited parking restrictions. So I also would support looking into this. At the same time, I do realize it is politically difficult. I wanted to suggest, well, first of all, I did want to comment on committee members Melton's comment about the 20% reduction in cars in the plan and whether it had considered EVs. I think it's important to keep in mind that EVs use a whole lot more greenhouse gas emissions, or emit a whole lot more greenhouse gas in manufactured than gas vehicles. I've read it takes something like 1.5 years to equalize, to offset the greenhouse gases from manufacture, for that to be offset by the greenhouse gas savings from driving. In addition to that, there is a big cost of maintaining and building the infrastructure to support cars. So I think that, as Nick Peterson pointed out, even with EVs, we still want a reduction in our car traffic. And another point I wanted to make, I'd like to see, this is a minor thing, but I think it could be make a difference, flags at pedestrian crossings. And in particular, I'm thinking of Pierce and Buchanan is a really dangerous crossing, and kids who are walking to Ocean View cross that. It'd be a really easy thing to have some flags. I see the flags in Berkeley. I see them up in Kensington. Also pedestrian crossings along San Pablo. I cross those on my bike. It can be very difficult to cross. And having the flags would be helpful. And again, that's probably I would think that's pretty minor cost and a really minor improvement. So that's all I'll comment on tonight. Thank you.
All right, that's all of the public comment. I think we've started this tradition of taking a break. So I think we should take our 5-minute break now. It is 8:02, and then come back and do some discussion. there? All right. Oh, you can't see if they're, because we got to call back. Well, let's call it and see if they're there. It is 8:06 and a half. All right, so we'll move to discussion of all these options and more.
I'd like to start with a request, actually. Lucinda mentioned that, if I'm paraphrasing her, that the GHG associated with constructing an EV is substantially higher than that of constructing a gas-powered car. And if there are links on studies, I'd sure like to look into that more. That's really interesting to me.
Sorry, if you said there are links.
Links to studies on that question?
Oh.
Just, I don't know anything about that.
I also don't know anything about that,
Said
but
something, like when my first, I was really getting cranky about EVs, like my second month here. I'll go back and look for it.
yeah, great. And if any member of the public has a link on such a topic, they can feel free to share with the CAC email. So maybe you'll get something there.
Thank you.
I'm happy to start if anyone wants to start. My general thinking on the topic of active transportation is safety is first. People need to feel safe in order to walk and bike more, and anything that we can do to improve safety will improve accessibility. Additionally, so I would add free locks to the support programs ideas, not just the free bike idea, but helping people lock stuff up, like having the physical lock, not just a bike locker, would be an option. And then this might be more challenging and cost more money, but infrastructure is accessible to everyone in a way that support programs, while they're very helpful and could be beneficial, need marketing to do. So, and more bike lanes, for example, maybe on Solano Avenue or San Pablo, but infrastructure changes are easy for everyone to see without having a lot of education. They're just right there. It's obvious to see. This should be a priority potentially for Solano San Pablo specifically. I personally would support a pay-to-park movement on Solano, even just a quarter for, per parking session. Not a lot, but something, so that it raises awareness about driving versus not driving. The challenge being that might drive more parking onto the side streets. So that is a question to discuss. In terms of schools and promoting active transportation, definitely it's good to start kids young about active transport being beneficial. It's good for health. It's good for the GHG emissions reduction, and thinking about how can we integrate this into the schools in terms of not just giving cars easy access for drop-offs, but maybe like a covered bike drop-off section so that people who bike their kids to school can benefit from having a rain shelter to wait for to pick up their kids, for example. So can we also prioritize that accessibility in schools for active transportation? So those are some of my thoughts.
I agree with what Catherine is saying. I wanted to maybe add a thought that when I look at the concept of the direct support programs header and everything that falls under it, events being one of them, I think about how we have like a fairly small staff, and what we do have as an auxiliary to that is a whole lot of community groups do various things. And so I think with all of these, but especially the events piece, I'm wondering, like, could we programmatically just support those groups in doing active transportation stuff? So like maybe we have a pool of money that's like a grant without too much overhead, micro grant, so if somebody wants to do especially like if there's a bike advocacy group that wants to do an event, we can, or Strollers or Millers wants to do an event, and we can say like, oh yeah, we have a pool of money for that. Here you go. And then more work gets done by more people more quickly than if we had to sort of channel everything we're trying to do just through city staff. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about when I've been looking at these. I have like a million more ideas, but as an overview.
This is great. I appreciate Member Bierce's comments and your seconding them. You know, I think that those are great concepts. I have 2 bullet points here. One is just, I think it was Lucinda Young who said that there were some cities that had ordinances that addressed the problems that were raised about people who have so many cars, they just shuffle them around their neighborhood. And I wonder, Lucinda, if you have those examples, if maybe you could share those with the Climate Action Committee email list, sort of like Member Melchin had asked for some examples. I would be curious to see those because I do think it's you know, an eyesore. I imagine it's inconvenient for people who live there and certainly not good for the environment to have all those cars. And then I will just share my impossible vision of turning Solano between Key Route and San Pablo Avenue into a non-car pedestrian, bike, and maybe shuttle bus zone. Lived here a long time in Albany. I've always thought that that would be such an awesome thing. And if I ever win the Mega Millions lottery, I'll pay to make it happen. But until then, it can be a vision, and maybe we can work in small steps to making Solano even more pedestrian and bike friendly.
I also want to add to the note about Solano and bike lanes is that I remember hearing somewhere that Solano, but not Marin, has the underlayment something with the road to allow for heavy vehicle traffic, whereas Marin does not. So whenever we repave Marin, maybe it would be helpful to have that heavy-duty car, auto, truck, whatever, underlayment so that we can shift heavy vehicles to Marin from San Pablo, since Marin is got a lot faster moving traffic than Solano does, and you can bike on it, it's got the bike lanes for it, but the safety is still the issue around the speed of vehicles.
That is a super cool idea. So anything infrastructure, we don't get to do, but we get to say, hey, Justin, while you're in the room, that was a super cool idea.
That idea was discussed with the design for the Marin repaving. You should bring it up as part of active transportation plan work. It's not going to be part of the current repaving of Marin, but it could be a future project.
Dovetailing the events concept and possibly funding events concept with the car-free zone concept. I mean, the whole slow streets thing that everyone was doing in the pandemic, I believe Oakland and San Francisco just made them permanent, some of them. I know Oakland did. No, San Francisco did as well. So that's sort of a way that one-off events, if we provide consistent funding for one-off events, could eventually provide proof of concept for bigger change.
I think, yeah, Kate, I really liked the idea you had to, using funds to amplify local groups to do this work as much as possible. The other thing I'm thinking about is, people use active transport, not just in the city limits of Albany, which can be tiny, but to do things they would do in their everyday life, which will go into Berkeley, Oakland, around. So the more we can, and a lot of these groups are doing work across cities. So I guess, any way we can help support kind of inner city groups across city opportunities, I think will be very effective. Supporting more active community. guess I'll just make one more general comment that, yes, this seems like an area ripe for us, for the CEC to jump in and, start putting together a plan of things we can do with dedicated.
Yeah, I was just going to say that kind of leads into the sort of next steps conversation, now that I've kind of talked about thoughts and priorities a bit. So I think there's a few different ways to go ahead in terms of next steps. You know, I think there's a discussion of how much effort and time and funding the committee thinks that should be put into this kind of thing. And then also kind of a discussion of, like, is there one or two sort of particular routes that the committee is interested in working on? Is it like, you know, a sort of larger plan with several different things involved? You know, it could be a subcommittee project potentially, or if it's sort of confined enough, you know, it could be something that I, as a staff member, just start kind of looking into. It sort of depends on the scale there. Like, if it's something like, can we do the crosswalk flags? Like, I can look into that and kind of bring some stuff back. If it's more of a sort of larger scale, we want to have a whole proposal, that's probably a subcommittee project. So yeah, I just encourage you to kind of talk about sort of scale, priorities, areas to focus.
I'm going to maybe speak briefly on just priorities. I would personally rate this as a pretty high priority because of the percentage of our emissions it represents. Like, if we can contribute in some unique way to getting that number down, that's a high priority.
I think the crossing flags are a quick, easy win. So that's, yeah, let's do that. I do support the bigger, more challenging, but more beneficial type stuff that might be other committees involved, like transportation, around getting that heavy duty vehicle stuff on Marin so we can get bike lanes on Solano, or maybe even get cars off Solano, or having 25 cents to park for however long on Solano to raise awareness of parking being a thing. Even if there's not a lot of money, just awareness of that would be helpful potentially. And yeah, it's kind of an intersection of, like, with the transportation and the bike lanes, and the rest of it is, it's how much can what does the CAC do versus the other committees do? I'd be curious to know, like, more about that overlap, or where that kind of domains are.
Did you want to respond to that?
Was it kind of a question, Catherine, about the overlap, or just sort of?
If Solano car free, what would that take?
I don't know about
what Dan was saying, you know. Or changing parking rules, or
and then get it done.
Yeah.
There was one thing I had a question about that came up in a previous meeting a long time ago, about Clipper card giveaways. I don't know what meeting this was, but there was some proposal about somewhere, not in this committee, about giving away Clipper cards to new residents. I'm mentioning it now, even though it's kind of like a wild card in response to what you just said, because I'm wondering what that would fall, if one were to do such a thing, that would fall under your header of, like, direct support.
Yeah, that would be like a subsidy program. Yeah, I haven't heard of that concept before, but yeah, I suppose it could be done. That would really kind of be in the public transit realm rather than active transit, but it does fall within reducing VMT, so it's sort of the same ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. I know there's a low income 50% off Clipper thing, but given how expensive BART is, like $10 to SF and back from Albany or El Cerrito or whatnot, it's still pretty expensive for low income folks. So it might be a good thing to mention, maybe the TC versus the CAC, but I agree that that's more transit is generally good.
I think both with cycling and taking transit, I don't think maybe this applies to walking, but among the parents that I know, there's a disconnect between what we'd like to be doing collectively and what people actually can like get over the hump of getting done. Like there's a certain parents are just very, very, very pressed for time, I think, and attention. And so I'm thinking both of these things, both bike rebates and accessory rebates and transit incentives of some kind could help like put it into someone's hand for them to try. And then they try this and then it works and they can keep going. Like there's, I think to what I see in my neighborhood is that's a big barrier to adoption, is just like people not really committing the focus and energy necessary to make a shift like that. So if we can help people make that shift, it could potentially have far-reaching effects. I also want to say on the I'm really into the direct support category on the question of perhaps like partnering with community organizations and funding community organizations, is that brings in more people to feel energized and motivated around climate. Like we have a community group that organizes around climate, but we also have another 50 plus community groups that could plug into climate stuff if we made it easy for them to do that. One thing I'm thinking of is if for users of the Ohlone Greenway, the path is starting to decay, the DG path that's soft. And I'm sure it will get fixed one day, but that's the kind of thing that a service project full of community volunteers could get done in one day. And then the city could be like, we'll organize it, and some community group can manage the volunteers. People do it and they feel like they're doing something about climate, and then they're really inspired and they come to our meetings. Oh, more ideas. I'm talking and talking. Who else? Does someone else want to take a turn? Someone somewhere, maybe in a public comment once, shared the idea of converting on-street parking to a different kind of parklet. So not a parklet as in a place where you sit outside a restaurant, but as in a mini park. So like expanding the planting area where your street tree might be to actually go into the street where your car would be parked. Maybe you don't actually need that parking space, or maybe you put it in one of those spots that's too small to park a car in. I thought that was a super cool idea, but I don't know if that's a city program, an infrastructure thing, a transportation thing. Maybe it's all of those things.
When you say that, are you talking about like parking day, like a one-day
No, I'm talking
thing,
about.
or are you talking about permanent constructed changes?
Yeah, like extending. So you know how there's some of those extended street tree wells now that curve out like that, but taking up an entire parking space in front of.
Or concrete or asphalt removal for a mini park with native habitat for pollinators and stuff.
Yeah. Would that be like, which committee is that?
The design considerations would be Transportation Commission. I mean, if you're talking about potential climate programming funding to fund that, then maybe that's priority discussion here as well in terms of use of those resources. But The use of the public right-of-way, I think, would be a Transportation Commission recommendation.
I'd be interested in hearing from the rest of the committee what priority this takes in terms of, like, how soon does everyone want to work on it and how much? Or I guess another way of putting that is there something else that we've been working on that seems more important than sort of putting active transportation high on the list?
I mean, I'll chime in. I think it's a fascinating topic and high priority, but I feel like I can't do another subcommittee or whatever. Like, I'm feeling like in our zero emissions transportation, we've got enough going on. So I don't want to dismiss this as being less important. I wasn't sure if that's where you were going, that we'd like form some kind of subcommittee or task force or whatever. Like, that's great. And I used to work in transportation planning a little bit, so I find it really interesting, but I don't know, and high priority, but just say, I don't know how many hours I can put toward it. I don't know if that's where you're going, but I was sort of assuming that.
I feel similarly. I'd be curious to know if Albany Strollers and Rollers or ACAC or the Rotary or other groups already have suggestions for these kinds of plans that they could present more directly to city staff, given that it seems like the CAC members here are kind of tapped out in terms of time commitments. So I wonder if that's a possibility to get some bandwidth available.
I don't know the answer to that offhand. I'm sure we could, reach out and ask. I think, in terms of time, it doesn't need to be a subcommittee project necessarily. Obviously, staff time is also limited. So I think it's sort of, if the committee really wants to try to get something into action on this, I think the fastest way to move forward with that is to kind of like zone in on like one or two things to focus on and develop, which, staff time used goes down dramatically when we can focus in on a smaller number of potential projects. So if there is sort of one or two things to prioritize, that's easier for me to kind of look into, do a little research, report back, and then as a whole committee in a meeting, we can sort of discuss what would make sense. If the committee members don't have time to kind of like delve into making some big plan, that's probably the easiest way to move forward on it. And yeah, we could reach out to other community groups and see if there's more ideas. But yeah, I think probably the most efficient thing is to try and see if there's any specific area that everyone can kind of narrow down and say, okay, we're all really interested in pursuing X.
What I'm hearing is the support for the crossing flags. That's an easy win. And then empowering people through events, through grants for events. Those seem like small and medium-sized projects that we could work on. And then in terms of the rest of the ideas, on-street parking, mini parklets, and parking changes, that seems like a Transportation Commission and other committees where folks can go comment on the plan and other areas where that's like more the focus, potentially.
That's exactly what my notes said too. Yeah, like the bucket flag sounds like a quick win kind of thing. And then the events funding, I'd be interested in fleshing out a little more.
I'm wondering also if there's anything that that would benefit the Transportation Commission if we took action on it. Like, there was that slight overlap in the Venn diagram that I keep thinking about. And like, if there's any way that we can unshackle their work or whatever by creating some program or plan or whatever, since we're on that side of things.
I'd say the transit discussion, the items that were brought up are probably the least overlap. They've been involved in some of the like transit planning that AC Transit is doing in terms of route changes, that kind of thing, but they haven't really gotten involved in other supports for riders outside of getting to and from stops or what the route planning is with our transit partners.
That's 3 things. I don't know if that's too many things, but I would love it if you're able to start a little investigating into that. Like, I guess I feel like I see a lot of public outreach from AC Transit and maybe the Metropolitan Transportation in general, and I'm wondering if they might be able to, serve up some ways that we can sponsor or events, transit events. Work also does like a ridiculous amount of PR. We have anime characters, art. It's cool.
Does everyone else kind of have similar thoughts about the like crossing flags / events focus? Is that generally? Okay. Well, if it sounds good to everyone, then moving forward, I can do some just, research on what those programs could look like and bring back some information and a couple options, and we can talk about it at a future meeting, and sort of see what makes sense from there.
Did you get is it all 3 of those things? The bucket flags, the events, and?
Yeah, and looking into, yeah, I don't know exactly how much I can pull together on transit, but I'll do my best and see if there's ways to kind of bring those together.
Just to clarify, the events piece of this, was that specific to active transportation events in some? I guess I was a little unclear.
Yeah, I'm a little
that
unclear.
direction.
Like, I feel like the thing that got me thinking of that actually was the Bon Marché presentation, and I was like, oh, if we just had a climate grant that people could apply for, that's not active transportation. So I don't, For me, it would be interesting to be a climate grant in general.
Okay.
You could always start with transportation and then expand.
Yeah, I mean, and what I think I can do is, take a look at what events and community groups are currently happening, and just kind of see what, if anything, a climate grant program type of thing could look like and what the logistics of that would be. I don't know offhand. But yeah, we can kind of think about that internally and, bring back some information, so. Yeah.
I would just put out also a general ask for resources to the committee here for anyone, for those who are really passionate about this topic. I think it's been hard for me to prioritize which of these is the best because I don't have a great sense of what are the actual barriers either in California or our community around more active transport. So yeah, I would love to get educated for those who have a lot of resources or experience here.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't plug participating in the active transportation planning that will be going underway shortly. It's not final, but the first workshop is likely to be October 24th, what usually is our Transportation Commission October meeting date.
Invite your friends. Okay, I think that's all the discussion we have for that item. Okay.
All right. It is time for the Zero Emission Transportation Subcommittee presentation.
I was putting the October 24th meeting on my calendar, so I'd be sure to invite my friends. Roy, should I just kind of, is that all right for me to chat through this? So, sorry, I didn't actually make a presentation, but I do have my notes organized and happy to share this document if people want it. But I have 3 sections to this update: background, updates, and recommendations. So as far as background, some of you might recall that our subcommittee made a presentation to the Climate Action Committee during the July meeting about the research we'd done on public curbside electric vehicle charging opportunities. Presentation focused on our learnings from meetings with 3 leading vendors of level 2 curbside EV charging. Those were VoltPost, It's Electric, and Flow. I can share my slides on that if people want those. Our subcommittee then met with Michelle, a video call on September 4th to discuss priorities and possible next steps for EV charging, public EV charging in Albany. And then we met last night to prepare this. Our committee met last night to prepare this. A couple of updates since the presentation. One is I had noticed that in the parking lot just to the west of here, the City Hall parking lot has a light pole that might be a suitable location for a volt post. Volt post are the folks who install level 2 EV charging on lighting poles. Doesn't require any trenching, really fast, cheap. It would enable 2 level 2 chargers, so you could do a traffic enforcement vehicle, for example, a police car. Might be a nice pilot way to test that technology. But the vendor would need to know, the circuit would need to accommodate 240 volts. So, we'd need to do a little research on that circuit and see if it's a suitable location for installing that technology. So that's one update. And the other is that Troy had seen that in February, the city of Alameda put out an RFO to provide public level 2 and fast charging EV stations on city-owned parking lots and curbside locations and multifamily housing sites. And they selected It's Electric, which was one of the vendors we talked to. And so that was an interesting update. So then for recommendations, Michelle was interested in sort of where we wanted to focus. In our presentation in the last meeting, we stated that our objective was to explore options for public curbside EV charging in Albany. We still feel that that should be the focus of our efforts. Albany is an EV charging desert, creating a large barrier to adoption, particularly for people renting or living in multifamily units. We can't force apartments to install EV charging infrastructure, so we think piloting a program to install public curbside EV charging stations in proximity to multifamily housing is a good target. There's one exception to that overall objective, which is the City Hall parking lot, because that doesn't fit squarely with that objective. We are interested in having the city pull lighting line maps and electric account information for the parking lot so that VoltPost could do an assessment and report back on whether it's feasible. And the other was to ask Danielle Mueller from City of Albany to present to this group about their RFO and progress on curbside charging with It's Electric, so we can learn more about their experience. And then after we hear back from City of Albany and VoltPost, and we hear from Alameda, and we think we'll be better positioned to make a more specific recommendation to City Council. And that is our update, unless Roy has anything to add.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just mention that, in addition to Alameda putting an RFO that involved curbside charging. San Francisco recently put out some guidelines around a curbside charging program as well. So there seems to be some momentum picking up around here. And I think, yeah, one of the reasons we decided there's still a there for curbside charging is, with the ones Dan mentioned about just in general access for multifamily homes, as well as it seems like a nascent market where government can play a big role, either directly being a customer or helping set up the guidelines to get more of these projects installed. Whereas things like chargers at Sprouts or something is a little more of a more established business market, business opportunity. So yeah, we feel like this could have a big impact and kind of be a good leveraging of funds, being kind of a first of its kind pilot, but still relatively low risk as these technologies are proven. They just haven't had a lot of opportunities to be deployed yet. And I think learning from Alameda would be really helpful. We kind of went back and forth on a lot of different program shapes this could take, from just general guidelines of anyone who wants to come install a charger to incentives. But it would be great to learn from more cities before we try to scope a project. I think that's where we're at right now.
All right, because we have this as sort of broken out as a separate item, I think we should take questions.
One question I have is, are you open to considering additional vendors, or is that vendor research period closed?
I wasn't able to find other vendors that seemed to fit criteria, but I would love to hear about others and talk to them. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but individually I am interested. I reached out to another vendor, EVgo, and they said they don't do curbside public charging.
Well, I'm happy to hear more in the discussion portion. We have to go to questions and then comment, right?
Sorry, could you say that again?
So we're going to go to questions and then comment, right? I had more to share in the discussion portion
Yeah,
around
we do.
vendors.
Correct, yeah, we're gonna do questions, we're gonna have any public comment, and then we'll have discussion. Let's go ahead and move to any public comment.
Go ahead, Lucinda.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I again feel that, as you pointed out, Albany is an EV desert, and this is a really important part of our cap that we get some EV chargers in. I did want to share that I reached out to the city manager, Nicole Amagar, and we have, I believe, discussed in here about the 5 EV chargers that the city council had previously authorized for installation in 2021. And I did reach out to her, and I got a comment back that she is, well, I'll just read it. It said that a grant award and just to refresh your memory, there were 5 EV chargers that had been authorized, installation, one at the community center, one at the Public Works, one in Ocean View parking lot, one in Civic Center parking lot, and one at the Library Community Center. And city manager had said that there was a grant award in the amount of $12,000 that was received. Unfortunately, the overall project scope and associated requirements were not fully understood at the time, and the cost of the project would have been much higher than this small funding award. Several of the city facility locations have older infrastructure that would involve electrical upgrades and related construction. Additionally, space around many city facilities is limited, which is also something that needs to be further considered. In order to effectively define the project scope and opportunity, we will be conducting a feasibility analysis of our facilities and associated issues as an important first step. I will be sure to provide updates as this work moves along. So apparently there is some work going on this at the city level, and I think it's important for the Climate Action Committee to coordinate with whatever work is going on. One thing that was not addressed in this email was that the plan that authorized this purchase, it provided that funding was from this $12,000 grant, plus the remainder of the funding was from Measure BB Measure BB local streets and roads. And it was not addressed in that email what happened to that funding source, the Measure BB. So I just wanted to point that out. We don't want to, I'm not sure how far the city went with this program before they decided that they didn't have the funds to complete it, but would like to hopefully avoid a duplication of work. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jean.
Hi, I didn't know if it was possible to do this on Zoom. It's pretty great that you can. My name's Jean Wu. I live in the city. I have 2 EVs, and I believe strongly that we need to increase our EV charging capability. I also think that street-side parking, street-side EV charging could be a really good idea, as long as we have the infrastructure to do it. But it sounds like the locations that were chosen before were not sufficiently high in terms of their basic infrastructure, and so a better feasibility study would be needed in order to do this. I also think if we can't put in 5, we could put in 4, and potentially we could use some of the DD money to do this. We need to encourage people to get out of their gasoline-powered cars and use EV parts. The other thing I wanted to say, which has nothing to do really with zero emissions, but maybe it does, is the idea that everyone rides bikes is foolish. Some of us are old and we don't ride bikes. And so I think having a free, emissions-free shuttle up and down Solano that could help people who want to go places but don't have the ability to carry all the stuff that they're shopping would be a big step forward and would help people get away from the idea of requiring a car to go shopping. So a lot of people who live near Solano probably shop on Solano, but they use a car because they may have stuff they have to carry. If we had a free, emission-free bus, the way that Emeryville does, then that would save us a lot of miles of travel and also save seniors who do not ride bikes. So I just would appreciate it if that would be a consideration of the committee. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Nick Peterson with Albany Climate Action Coalition. So here's an idea. You don't necessarily need to install the specific infrastructure. If you had a parking management plan, let's say you brought in Park Mobile along Solano Ave and it was no longer free to park on Solano Ave, except for electric vehicles. Then electric vehicles, you wouldn't need to have a special electric vehicle space that would just sit there empty with frustrated gas car drivers fuming and spewing about it. So you could have EVs parked for free, and you would have other vehicles have to pay through non-cash handling activity through touch cards or smartphones. So, you know, there's a technology to make this happen. You don't have to put meter heads at every single parking space. And that would be a creative way to do it. Are people going to like it? No, they're probably not initially, but that's part of making a change away from just the gas driving experience we have now. I also think there's a lot of opaqueness about what's happening, you know, especially with this charge station business. When this this started well before 2021. I remember it was going on when the predecessor to Lizzie was announced very happily that we were going to get 5 charge stations. It was all approved in the budget, which must have been more around 2018, 19. And it eventually just disappeared with absolutely zero information on what it was. Later it came out, oh, it was expensive. Well, let's see some figures. What did someone figure out? Or did they just throw up their hands and say, this is too complicated for me, I'm not going to do it? This is not how you behave during a crisis. I mean, you have to put your information together, see where the hurdles are, and then see what it takes to get over the hurdles. You know, is it, you know, the 12,000, and actually I have seen in budgets, I've seen $50,000 was there and put in by the council at one point to do this. So, I mean, there's no information provided. It's not clearly, transparently done. It reminds me a lot of the parking enforcement vehicle where we got misinformation. It seems like there are members of the staff that are not working as if this is a crisis and we need to do activity and Albany needs to lead as a city. So I'd like to see a lot more transparency on this issue. And, you know, it's nice the city manager is going to get back and keep us posted, but I'll wait and see that when it actually happens. I find the city is too opaque on this and we're not getting information. If it's really that, hey, it overwhelms us, we don't know how to solve it, then just say that, you know, and maybe we can find some help somewhere else. Thank you.
No other public speakers.
And with that, we'll move to discussion.
I have a bunch of comments, if I might start, and I have a lot to say. I talked to a EV charging startup founder, and I have no financial interest in any EV charging companies directly. I've not invested in any of these, but I got a sense of some of the common problems that the CAC should consider when evaluating vendors. There are 8 areas I want to share. 1, potential vandalism. Copper charging cables are worth money on the black market, and if people cut a cable from a charger, it becomes useless. So addressing how do you handle vandalism in public chargers is essential to functioning charging equipment. Secondly, repairability of modules is important because if you have to replace a whole charging station due to some issue, like if someone hits a baseball bat to it, try to break it, is it modularly repairable and therefore reduces e-waste, or to replace the whole thing and create a lot of trash? Third, does repair require skilled labor like electricians, or can the item be sent back to manufacturer easily or repaired quickly in a modular format? There's a shortage of electricians in the US right now. It's a very popular need to have electricians for electrification, but we need more people doing the work. So having low skilled labor or having it mailed back to manufacturer to diagnose problems is a really efficient way to fix things. Fourth, social justice and equity considerations. We need to have chargers in multifamily buildings, not only on the street. People typically charge where they live. And in renters or apartment buildings, they don't often have a lot of options. So street charging is fine if you're shopping somewhere potentially, but most people want to charge at night where they live, and there aren't a lot of good options for that right now. And a lot of chargers also are very expensive, and perhaps too expensive. And a lot of companies out there are doing software on top of commodity hardware rather than really innovating on the hardware itself. That brings me to the 5th item around actually creating new additional value or innovations in the hardware that makes charging a better experience for the users, or cheaper, or less prone to vandalism, or just as an overpriced bunch of software on top of anything you get on Amazon for $100 in terms of the actual physical infrastructure. Item 6, does the pricing of charging align incentives for people who are having the charger on their property, with multifamily, for example, rather than public charging? But a lot of problems are happening around poor maintenance and non-working chargers because there's no incentive for a building owner to get something repaired if they're not making money off of it, for example. So figuring out how do you align the economics to make sure that chargers are functioning as much as possible. And then item 7, upgrades to transmission. I know Nicole Nick mentioned, I think someone else mentioned that, or is it Senator Katie? I forget. But the upgrades to electrician transmission capabilities take a lot of time and a lot of money. And upgrading panels, upgrading transmission lines is very slow and challenging. So how do we do the most with the capacity that we have in existing buildings? For example, well, there already are interconnect to the utility is one approach. And then last item, if you have multifamily, for example, is it a hassle for the property owner? So prioritizing ease of use, usability, as well as the economics and the affordability. There's a lot of things going on here. And one thing I'd like to suggest is that Moon 5 Technologies for multifamily charging is worth checking out because they use a bring your own charging cable that makes vandalism unprofitable. So people already have a cable in their car, just having a post out there with an electricity box is not going to be as a big a target for theft. It's common in Europe, but not the US, apparently. The modular design they have, and the repairs don't require skilled labor, so it makes it easier to repair. There's no transmission upgrade needed. It's going for multifamily homes and has a way to work with the electrical system that's not requiring any changes to that. And the pricing is much more affordable. So ChargePoint, for example, is $10,000 for a charger and $10,000 for 10 years. It's expensive, and the technology really isn't that much different than things you can get off of, Amazon in terms of what you're getting. So you need to have things be affordable and good pricing for that, aligning incentives. So that's my 2 cents on multifamily charging. I should consider Moon 5 as a possible option. They're pretty early stage, so maybe not the final choice, but something to consider. And the Volts podcast also had an episode on It's Electric. They're also doing the bring your own cable model. The joke is it's not weird, it's just European for that model of the bring your own cable. And they're trying to make the charging experience better for users, and then it's not like a giant gas station thing, but it's kind of like plugging in your phone to the wall kind of experience so that it's much simpler and user-friendly. So there's a lot of content, I've talked a lot today, but lots of information for questions to ask of vendors and things to consider are helpful.
I'm going to jump in quickly and note that it's 8:58, so we'll need to extend the time for the meeting.
Before we think about how much time to extend, I'm wondering how many committee members have discussion or commentary? Okay, then I move we extend just to 9:10. How does that sound?
Second.
Second.
Member Bierce?
Yes.
Member Fasoon? Member Hodges?
Yes.
Member Lieberman?
Yes.
Member Milton?
Yes.
Chair Hill McClanahan?
Yes. I liked the comment from, I think, Lucinda, about coordinating. Because if there's somebody in the city right now doing a renewed feasibility analysis, that does kind of dovetail, even though it's a different vendor in all likelihood, it could potentially become one big project in terms of funding both types of chargers, or not, I don't know. It just seems like maybe information should be flowing about what they're finding, and what you're finding.
I'm not sure I understand the scope of that evaluation. Is that just for parking city vehicles on city lots?
No, that's for public chargers on public property. So it wouldn't be curbside, but it was, I believe they were supposed to be public chargers, right? In the school and.
So as far as I know, the previous grant was for public charging. I know right now, the Public Works Department is working on a feasibility or an analysis of kind of building upgrades throughout the city and also EV charging. I'm not aware of a current analysis for public EV charging, although, I think with this proposal that the subcommittee is talking about, if the committee agrees that this is the right direction to be focusing on, then basically, you know, I and the subcommittee members would be doing some work internally with the Public Works Department and others to kind of do that feasibility analysis to see if, you know, does the It's Electric program on you know, on curbside areas work? Is that feasible? Kind of digging into those details. Does that clarify?
I mean, I thought the thing that Lucinda was alluding to was the previously approved chargers, that those were public chargers for public use.
Yeah, that grant program, I believe, was for public charging.
Yeah. Okay.
But on city lots, is that what you're saying? Like,
The sites she mentioned included city and school lots.
The previous grant was for on city lots. The feasibility that I think has been referenced that Public Works is looking at is also on city lots near city buildings. I think we haven't gotten far enough to know, are we just talking about city fleet or are we talking about public charging and the programming side of it? I don't think we're there yet.
okay. I want to make sure, like, for Member Bierce's comment, point number 4, that our subcommittee also addressed, and I mentioned, is that we think the focus should be on making this accessible to multifamily, and that may not be a good fit for putting it on city property. So I just want to call that out, because if the priority is near multifamily, I don't know if there is city property that would work near multifamily, and I think that's an important point. So I'm just calling that out. I want to coordinate on the feasibility study. I just don't know if these things are the same.
Totally. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say my question to the committee is, does the subcommittee's analysis of priority for those 2 items that Dan mentioned sound right to the rest of the committee? And should the subcommittee pursue working on a feasibility analysis with staff for those 2 items?
One item being charging near multifamily dwellings.
Yeah, curbside charging near multifamily, and then also the possibility of trying to do a light pole charger installation at City Hall. Again, we don't know the feasibility of those, but that would be kind of the next step, is to really dig into that.
I mean, I just want to say I appreciate the work that you guys are putting into this. Like, you're basically doing, like, you know, serious hours of work here, and those seem like valuable priorities to me.
Yeah, I agree. I might add to the multifamily piece is that curbside could be an option or could be in the building, depending on what turns out best in your analysis. I also want to echo what Jean said about Measure DD funds. We got the money, folks. Let's go spend it on this, or something like that.
I just, again, want to call a distinction between putting the chargers on private property in a multifamily building's parking lot not being accessible to other people. I think these are all good objectives, but we can't, I don't think, the idea was to select priorities. And so if we want to make the priority putting EV chargers in multifamily parking lots, that is a separate objective. And it may be the highest priority. I'm just saying that wasn't what we identified as the highest priority.
Okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
All right. It sounds like we all have the feedback that we need. All right, we'll move on to subcommittee updates. Is there and I think in the interest of very limited time, maybe we can skip questions. We can do updates, all the updates together, one public comment period, and then questions, discussion, whatever. So is there an update from Environmental Justice and Education Subcommittee?
Did we not officially sunset that, like,
Let's do it.
last meeting? Or,
I thought we did, but it keeps coming
I thought we
back.
already did.
We discussed it
Yeah.
and never officially did it, so that would need a motion.
Oh, okay.
I move that we sunset this awesome committee that has done good work, but is not currently a committee.
Need a second?
I think it needs a second.
Seconded.
Okay, Member Bierce.
Yes.
Member Fasoon.
Yes.
Member Hodges. Member Lieberman.
Yes.
Member Melgen.
Yes.
Chair Vahil McClanahan.
Yes. The next one is zero emission transportation. I think we're good. The last one is home electrification subcommittee. We have kind of two updates. We're also talking about sunsetting this committee. Maybe, is it all right? Can I explain why? And then, okay. So I'm going to explain why, but then also Mark has this kind of an ongoing project that I think is a valuable thing to share here. We had, in meeting with Michelle a few times, kind of got a sense of the scope of work for which a subcommittee would be valuable, which is to say, if it's a small thing, it can just be like advice to staff to look at it. And if it's a really big, to your budget kind of big thing, then that's when we want a subcommittee to start serving up ideas. And we did not have that size of idea for outreach. We had a lot of one-off small ideas, except for what Mark's about to explain, which is a bigger idea. I think we're kind of ready to fold as a subcommittee, but before we do, oh, and also I guess one thing I wanted to share is I feel like the home electrification outreach piece will hopefully be a lot clearer when the grant work starts going forward on the block electrification, because they're going to do so much outreach and research. It would be much clearer after that what we need to do citywide. Over to you.
Well, try to do this in 90 seconds. I think there may be a bunch of homeowners in Albany who are reluctant to start HVAC investigations because of sales pressure. So a long time ago, I mentioned in this committee an idea to get around that by having Albany retain a contractor. There was some comment about liability risk. So recently, I spoke to a lawyer who's represented a bunch of municipalities in the area. He felt that that could be reduced to a very low level through various liability waivers and so on. So I emailed that information to one of the city council people and got back a positive response. Yeah, let's really look into this, along with a note that with elections coming up, some of the city council people are beyond up to their neck in busy stuff. So I'll keep on pursuing this at kind of a low level. And if there's a new Civic Spark person coming on board, this could be a project for them. Thank you.
We should probably extend.
All right, that is a good idea. I move that we extend to 9:15.
Second.
Okay, Member Bierce.
Yes.
Member Fasoon.
Yes.
Member Hodges. Yes. Member Lieberman.
Yes.
Member Melgen.
Yes.
Chair Vahil McClanahan.
Yes. Okay, so I further move that we sunset the home electrification outreach subcommittee.
I'll second that.
Member Bierce.
Yes.
Member Fasoon.
Yes.
Member Hodges. Yes. Member Lieberman.
Yes.
Member Melgen.
Yes.
Chair Vahil McClanahan.
Yeah. That's what happens when you take a month off. All right, so now, any requests from the committee for future agenda items?
We do usually open up public comment.
Comment first?
Yeah, we might want to do a reduced time, though.
Yeah, I think we might. Okay, sorry, I'm going to invert that. Any requests for future agenda items from the public, and could you please try to state it in 1 minute?
I meant public comment on the subcommittee updates.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
See, I
sorry.
didn't do my cheat sheet. Yes, please. Public comment welcomed now for subcommittee updates. But brief, please, 1 minute. Thank you.
Nick Peterson, go ahead.
So I'll be brief. I'd like to piggyback on Member Milgen's suggestion. I think there should be a low-income electrification subcommittee, and the highest priority should be to outreach to low-income homeowners, and then also explore doing naturally occurring affordable housing, apartment buildings that have gas, water heat, and look at ways to help them convert to heat pump water heating. Information I've had recently is heat pump water heaters have gotten very expensive. Looks like contractors are gouging because of the rebates. So it's essentially doubled, almost tripled, and they're not cheap to install anymore. And that would be one of the best ways to reduce a lot of carbon use in the city. Thank you.
Lucinda, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say I think that the Home Electrification Committee is very, very important, and that we should be focusing on the low and moderate income folks. I think there's a huge amount of outreach needed, and I look forward to hearing more about that in the future. I will just say also, I'm going to combine my suggestion for future agenda item to just say I think we need to look at heat pump hot water rebates as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. So with that, let's move. No, we need to discuss any of this? I feel like that we've taken all the actions. But formally speaking, if anyone would like to do any more discussion on the committee, on the subcommittees, now is the time. All right, super. Last item, future agenda items from the committee. Anyone has any?
I have a lot of ideas. I'll just share one, which is around advancing native plant landscaping, habitat. Maybe this be the Parks Commission thing. This could be something with regard to sidewalk repair, like someone's talking about the mini parklets where there's currently not enough space for car parking, but there could be a little mini park there. So we can have more pollinator support for beloved monarchs and birds. I saw somewhere that birds need 70% of native species to procreate. So how we support our local habitat for the environmental populations is really helpful. And potentially a ordinance around protecting native trees on private property. There's one of this in Berkeley, Oakland, Palo Alto, SF around native tree protections for heritage or large native trees, for example.
Any more from the committee? All right. Any agenda item requests from the public?
Go ahead, Nick.
Nick Peterson. I think you guys need to bring forward the idea of some kind of parking management or payment issue. Maybe looking at paid parking on Solano and allowing EVs to park for free or something like that. I mean, we need to take one specific minimally impacted area and start to bring forward this idea that driving cars around is not as advantageous as doing other things. Thanks.
Go ahead, David. David Wemmer, go ahead. We'll come back to you. Lucinda, go ahead.
Yes, just be brief. I want to support Nick Peterson's suggestion that we need a parking management plan. And second, I want to second Committee Member Bierce's suggestion to support native plants in our community and a tree protection ordinance. I think that our arborist needs to get on board with the importance of native plants to support our struggling ecosystem. I have continued to hear comments that there's really not, native trees are not important in Albany because we were all grasslands at one point. And I think that is a deterrent to moving forward with native plants and native trees, which are so important. Thank you.
Jean Wu, go ahead.
I'd just like to include in your potential for future agenda the idea of having an emission-free shuttle up and down Solano, which would help the residents greatly, I think. Thank you.
David Wemmer, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I figured out my problem. David Wimmer, ACAC. Yeah, I support adding an agenda item for looking into financial support for heat pump water heaters, and then also protection of heritage native trees on private property. That's it. Thank you.
That's all the public comments.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's adjourn. It is 9:18.
And our next meeting will be on October 16th.